You know that feeling when you think you have everything figured out? The perfect marriage, the dream life, the fairy tale ending. I had all of that. My name is Rebecca Morrison, and 3 weeks ago, I was standing in a bridal suite at the Plaza Hotel, 7 months pregnant, adjusting my dress for our vow renewal ceremony. Then I heard my husband through a bathroom door that wasn't quite latched. I can't do this anymore, mother. I'm calling it off. I'm leaving Rebecca for Sienna. In that moment, my entire world shattered. But here's the thing about being shattered. Sometimes it's exactly what you need to remember who you really are. See, my husband forgot something important. Before I became his wife, I was one of the best asset protection attorneys in New York. The woman other lawyers called when they needed someone who could find hidden money and win impossible cases. He thought he was so clever, moving $47 million to offshore accounts, setting up companies in his mistress's name, planning to leave me penniless with our baby. But while he was busy planning my destruction, I was planning something better. Revenge? No. Justice. This is the story of how I turned the tables on a billionaire who thought he could destroy me, how I froze every penny, how I walked down that aisle and exposed everything in front of 300 guests, how I took back my power, my life, and my future. Stay with me, because what I did at that altar, you're not going to believe it. The bathroom door wasn't quite latched. That's all it took to destroy everything. Rebecca Morrison stood in the bridal suite of the Plaza Hotel, 7 months pregnant, adjusting the cream silk dress that had been custom made to drape elegantly over her swollen belly. The fabric was Italian, expensive, perfect. She had spent 6 weeks working with the designer to get it exactly right for their vow renewal ceremony. 10 years of marriage, a baby on the way. A fresh start to celebrate a decade of love and partnership. At least that's what she had thought this day was about. Her reflection stared back at her from the gilded mirror. Loose waves cascaded over her shoulders, styled that morning at the salon. Diamond earrings caught the afternoon light, the ones Jonathan had given her last Christmas, presented over champagne and oysters at Le Bernardin. She looked every inch the radiant bride, the successful wife of a billionaire, the picture of happiness. Rebecca smoothed her hands over the silk one more time, turning slightly to check the back. The dress needed to be perfect. Everything needed to be perfect. This was their day, their moment, their chance to show the world that the Whitmores were stronger than ever. She reached for her lipstick on the marble counter when she heard it. His voice, muffled but distinct, coming from the adjacent room through the door that hadn't quite latched. I can't do this anymore, Mother. I'm calling it off. Rebecca's hand froze halfway to her lips. The lipstick tube trembled in her fingers. That was Jonathan, her husband, the father of the baby currently doing gymnastics in her womb. Jonathan, you can't be serious. Carolyn Whitmore's voice, sharp, disbelieving. Years of Upper East Side breeding barely masking her shock. Rebecca is 7 months pregnant with your child. 7 months. What are you thinking? Rebecca's free hand moved instinctively to her belly. The baby kicked. Once. Hard enough to make her gasp. Then twice, then 3 times. As if the child could sense something was terribly, terribly wrong. Sienna doesn't care about that. Jonathan's voice was firm. Decided. The same tone he used in board meetings when he'd made up his mind and wouldn't be swayed. She loves me for who I am, not what I have, not what I can provide. She actually sees me, Mother. Sienna Clark, his executive assistant, 26 years old. Beautiful in that effortless way that made Rebecca feel ancient at 34. Always perfectly dressed in designer suits that Rebecca suspected Jonathan bought for her. Always available, always there with coffee exactly how he liked it. Documents were organized precisely how he needed them. Her schedule molded completely around his demands. Always smelling like lavender, Rebecca's knees felt weak. She gripped the marble countertop, her knuckles turning white. She counted the veins in the stone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, anything to keep breathing, anything to keep standing, anything to process what she was hearing. This is madness, Carolyn said, her voice rising. Absolute madness. What exactly are you planning to do, Jonathan? Have you thought this through at all? I'm going to tell everyone, today, at the ceremony. Jonathan's words were measured, calm, like he was discussing a business strategy, not the destruction of his pregnant wife's life. I'll announce that I am leaving Rebecca for Sienna. Rip the Band-Aid off. Make a clean break. Start fresh. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. Her vision blurred at the edges. The bathroom tilted slightly, or maybe that was just her world spinning off its axis. He was going to do it in front of everyone, in front of 300 guests, in front of her colleagues from the law firm, in front of their friends and family, in front of New York society. He was going to humiliate her publicly while she stood there 7 months pregnant with his child. You're going to humiliate her? Caroline's voice cracked. Publicly? Jonathan, this is beneath even you. This is cruel. It's the only way to make a clean break, mother. You know how Rebecca is. She'll fight me otherwise. Lawyer brain, always calculating, always strategizing, always 3 steps ahead. He paused, and Rebecca could picture him running his hand through his hair, the gesture he made when he was convinced he was right. This way, everyone sees, everyone knows. She can't manipulate the narrative. She can't spin it. She can't make me the villain. It'll be done. Final. No going back. The baby kicked again, harder this time, insistent, demanding, as if saying, I'm here, Mama. Don't forget about me. I exist. I matter. Rebecca pressed both hands to her belly, whispered so quietly even she could barely hear it. I know, baby. I know you're here. I won't forget. Never. She looked at herself in the mirror, really looked this time, not at the carefully styled hair or the expertly applied makeup or the cream silk dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She looked at her eyes, at the woman staring back at her, at the person she had become over these 10 years of marriage. When had she stopped recognizing herself? When had she become the kind of woman who ignored the signs that were so obvious now that she was forced to see them? Because there had been signs. God, there had been so many signs. The late nights that became later and later until he stopped coming home at all some evenings, texting that he'd crashed at the office. The business trips that multiplied from once a month to twice a week. The way he stopped asking about the baby, stopped asking about her day, her feelings, her dreams, her fears. The way he stopped touching her. Not just sexually, though that had dried up months ago, blamed on the pregnancy, on exhaustion, on stress, but the small touches. The hand on her back as they walked, the kiss on the forehead, the fingers intertwined while watching television. When was the last time he had really looked at her? When was the last time he had seen her as anything more than an obligation, an obstacle, a problem to be solved? And she had told herself it was fine, normal. Marriage was work. Marriage was compromise. Marriage was sacrifice. Marriage was standing by your man even when your gut screamed that something was desperately wrong. Even when you woke up at 3 in the morning with a feeling of dread you couldn't explain. Even when you caught yourself checking his phone, his emails, his credit card statements, then hating yourself for being that kind of wife. The paranoid wife, the jealous wife, the irrational hormonal pregnant wife. But standing in that bathroom, hands gripping cold marble, listening to him plan her public destruction, something shifted inside Rebecca Morrison. Because 3 weeks ago, she had found something. 3 weeks ago, she had stopped being the victim and started being the warrior she had been before Jonathan Whitmore had made her forget her own strength. 3 weeks ago, everything had changed, and Jonathan had no idea what was coming. Rebecca took a deep breath, released her grip on the counter, smoothed down her dress one final time. She looked at her reflection and saw something different now. Not a victim, not a fool, not a woman about to be humiliated. She saw Rebecca Morrison, former partner at Morrison & Associates, the attorney who specialized in asset protection during high-stakes divorces, the woman who had never lost a case, the strategist who could see 5 moves ahead when everyone else was still processing move 1. She saw a woman who had been playing chess while her husband thought they were playing checkers. A small smile curved her lips. Not happiness, something darker, something sharper, something like justice. She walked to the bathroom door, heels clicking on the marble floor, pushed it open just enough to slip through, moved silently through the dressing room, out into the hallway. She didn't go toward the room where Jonathan and Caroline were talking. She went the other direction, toward the service elevator, away from the confrontation, away from the ceremony that was supposed to start in 43 minutes, away from the husband who thought he held all the cards. Her phone was already in her hand as she pressed the elevator call button. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, pulling up a contact. The elevator arrived with a soft ding. She stepped inside, pressed the button for the lobby. The doors closed, sealing her in silence. Rebecca put the phone to her ear, listening to it ring once, twice. Grace, her voice was steady, calm. The voice of a woman who had a plan. I need you to meet me, now. Bring the folder. Bring everything we've gathered. Grace Holland, investigative journalist and best friend since their freshman year at Columbia, didn't ask questions. She never did. That was what 2 decades of friendship taught you. Trust, immediate, unquestioning trust. Where are you? Grace's voice was alert, concerned. Columbus Circle, the Starbucks on the corner, the one with the outdoor seating. Give me 20 minutes. Are you okay? Rebecca watched the floor numbers descending. 7, 6, 5, 4. I will be, she said. She said in 20 minutes. She ended the call as the elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened to reveal the plaza's opulent entrance hall. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Guests in designer clothing milled about, early arrivals for the ceremony. She recognized faces, business associates, society friends, people who would soon witness something very different from what they expected. Rebecca walked through them all, head high, shoulders back. Every inch the poised, successful woman she had always been, the woman she had let herself forget. People turned to stare. Of course they did. A woman in a bridal gown, 7 months pregnant, walking through the plaza lobby on a Sunday afternoon like it was the most natural thing in the world. Let them stare. She pushed through the revolving door, stepped onto Fifth Avenue. The September afternoon was perfect. Crisp air, brilliant sunshine. The kind of day that belonged in a romantic comedy, not a tragedy. But maybe this wasn't a tragedy, Rebecca thought as she started walking. Maybe this was something else entirely. Maybe this was a beginning disguised as an ending. She walked with purpose toward Columbus Circle. The cream silk dress flowed around her. Her heels clicked on the pavement. Tourists and locals parted to let her pass. This vision of bridal elegance moving through Manhattan like she owned it. And in a way, she did. This was her city. She had built her career here. Made partner at 32. Become one of the most sought-after attorneys in New York for protecting assets during divorces. She had forgotten that. Let herself forget that. Let Jonathan make her forget that. No more. The baby kicked, and Rebecca put her hand on the spot, smiled despite everything. We're going to be okay, she whispered to her unborn child. Better than okay, I promise you that. Because 3 weeks ago, when she had smelled lavender on Jonathan's skin at 2 in the morning, when she had watched him stand outside their bedroom door for 60 seconds before choosing to sleep in the guest room, when she had known with absolute certainty that her marriage was over, that was when she had stopped being afraid. That was when she had started fighting back. That was when Rebecca Morrison had remembered exactly who she was. And Jonathan Whitmore was about to find out. It started with lavender and ended with lies. Tuesday night, September 1st. Rebecca had been in bed, 6 months pregnant, her body a landscape of new aches and discomforts. Swollen ankles that made her designer shoes unwearable, lower back pain that radiated down her legs, the baby pressing on her bladder so relentlessly that she had to pee every 30 minutes, which made sleep a distant fantasy. She had been lying there in the dark, in the king-size bed that felt enormous when Jonathan wasn't there, one hand on her belly, counting kicks. The baby had been active that night, doing somersaults, it seemed, or maybe kickboxing. Each movement had been a reminder that in 3 months, everything would change. In 3 months, she would be responsible for another human being. If only she had known how much would change before then. She had heard his key in the lock at 2:17 in the morning. She had checked the clock, added it to the mental tally she had been keeping without meaning to. The late nights, the missed dinners, the forgotten appointments. His footsteps in the hallway had been careful, quiet. The steps of a man trying not to wake someone, or the steps of a man who had something to hide. He had paused outside their bedroom door. Rebecca had closed her eyes, regulated her breathing, pretended to be asleep. She had counted the seconds, 63 of them, more than a full minute of him standing there deciding whether to come in. He hadn't. She had heard him walk away, heard the guest room door open and close, heard the shower run for exactly 11 minutes. She had counted, unable to stop herself, hating herself for it, but unable to stop. And then she had smelled it. Lavender. It had drifted down the hallway, unmistakable and wrong. Not wrong because it was unpleasant. Carolyn Whitmore's signature scent was actually quite lovely, a custom blend from some exclusive parfumery in Paris that cost $800 for a small bottle. Wrong because Caroline was in the Hamptons. Rebecca had called her that very afternoon to discuss the vow renewal plans. They had talked about flowers, peonies or roses, white or cream. They had discussed the guest list, the menu, the music. Carolyn had been at the beach house. Rebecca had heard the ocean in the background. So if Jonathan smelled like his mother's perfume, but his mother was 90 miles away, then someone else was wearing that scent. Someone who had figured out that the way to Jonathan Whitmore's heart, or at least his bed, was through the scent of maternal approval. Someone young, ambitious, calculating. Someone like Sienna Clark. Rebecca had lain in the dark, hand on her pregnant belly, and let that knowledge settle into her bones. Let it sink in. Let it become real. She had known, of course, on some level she had known for months, maybe longer. The signs had been there. The emotional distance, the physical coldness, the way he looked at her like she was furniture. Useful, necessary, but not desired. Not cherished, not loved. But knowing something in your gut and having proof were two entirely different things. The lavender was proof. The baby had kicked, hard, as if to say, "What are you going to do about this, Mama?" Rebecca had stared at the ceiling, at the crown molding she had chosen when they had renovated the penthouse 5 years ago. At the home she had built with a man who was destroying her, and she had made a decision. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't confront, wouldn't scream or throw things or collapse into the kind of emotional breakdown that Jonathan would use against her later, that he would point to as evidence of instability, hormones, pregnancy-induced irrationality. No, she would do what she had always done best. She would gather information, build a case, prepare for war. The next morning, Rebecca had done what she always did when she couldn't sleep, when her mind was racing, when she needed to feel in control of something, anything. She had reorganized the nursery. At 3:45 in the morning, she had stood in the room they had designated for the baby, sorting tiny clothes by color and size. White onesies in one drawer, blue sleepers in another. Yellow blankets folded precisely on the shelf. White, blue, yellow, white, blue, yellow. A meditation of preparation for a child whose father was slipping away. A ritual of creating order when everything else was chaos. The nursery was perfect now. Or it would be if a perfect nursery could make up for an imperfect marriage. The crib was assembled. She had done it herself when Jonathan had been too busy. The changing table was stocked. The rocking chair sat by the window, waiting for those midnight feedings that she would apparently be doing alone. She had been folding a tiny yellow blanket, soft fleece that had cost too much but felt like a cloud, when she had made the call. 7:30 in the morning. Early, but Grace would be awake. Grace was always awake. Journalists didn't keep normal hours. "I need you to look into something for me," Rebecca had said without preamble. Grace had been her friend long enough to hear what Rebecca wasn't saying. The tremor beneath the calm, the pain beneath the professional request. "What's his name?" Grace had asked gently. "Sienna Clark. She works for Jonathan. Executive assistant. 26. Started about 8 months ago." There had been a pause. The kind of pause that meant Grace was already putting pieces together, already understanding. "Give me 48 hours, Grace had said. "Thank you." "Rebecca, are you okay?" "I will be." Rebecca had ended the call and stood in the nursery in the perfect room for a baby who would grow up in a broken home, and she had let herself feel it. All of it. The betrayal, the anger, the grief for the future she had imagined that would never exist. She had let herself feel it for exactly 5 minutes. Then she had locked it away, put on her armor, and started preparing for battle. The next 48 hours had been a masterclass in pretending. Rebecca had gone to her prenatal appointment alone. Again. Dr. Brennan had measured her belly, 26 weeks, measuring right on track. Had checked the baby's heartbeat, strong and steady at 148 beats per minute. Had asked the routine questions. How are you feeling? Tired. The truth, but not the whole truth. That's completely normal. Growing a human is exhausting work. Is Jonathan excited about the baby? Rebecca had smiled. The smile she had perfected over 10 years of marriage. The smile that said everything was fine when nothing was fine. He's very busy with work right now. The company is expanding. You know how it is. Dr. Brennan had squeezed her hand, a moment of human connection that had almost broken Rebecca's composure. Make sure you're taking care of yourself too, not just the baby. You matter. Do I, Rebecca had wanted to ask, because I don't feel like I matter. I feel like an incubator, a vessel, a placeholder until someone younger and more exciting comes along. But she had just nodded, smiled, thanked the doctor, played her part. She had attended a charity luncheon with Caroline discussing the vow renewal plans. Flowers, they had decided on peonies. Color scheme, cream and gold. Music, a string quartet for the ceremony, a jazz band for the reception, planning a celebration of a marriage that was already dead. Caroline had been enthusiastic, completely unaware that her son was planning to destroy everything. This will be wonderful, Rebecca, a fresh start. 10 years is a milestone. You and Jonathan are such an inspiration. An inspiration. Right. Rebecca had gone to her office, the one she barely used anymore since Jonathan had encouraged her to step back, to focus on the baby, to take it easy, the corner office she had fought for, the partnership she had earned, all gathering dust while she played the role of devoted wife. She had sat at her desk, in the leather chair that still felt like hers even though she had abandoned it, and she had remembered who she used to be. Rebecca Morrison, partner at Morrison and Associates. 32 years old when she made partner, the youngest in the firm's history. Specialist in asset protection during high-stakes divorces. The attorney other attorneys called when they needed someone who could find hidden money, protect vulnerable clients, navigate the ugliest separations with surgical precision. She had won cases against men far more powerful than Jonathan Whitmore, had protected women far more vulnerable than she was. When had she forgotten that? When had she let herself become small? Sitting in that office, Rebecca had felt something shift. The fear was still there, the hurt was still there, but underneath it all was something else. Anger. Not hot, explosive rage. Something colder, more focused. The kind of anger that didn't burn out. The kind that lasted, the kind that won wars. 48 hours after her call, Grace had arrived at Rebecca's office with a folder. Rebecca had been reviewing old case files, reminding herself of her own capabilities, reminding herself that she knew how to fight. Grace had closed the door behind her, set the folder on the desk. Her expression had been carefully neutral, but Rebecca had known her friend long enough to see the fury beneath. "I'm sorry," Grace had said, 2 words that confirmed everything. Rebecca had opened the folder with steady hands, professional detachment, like she was reviewing evidence for a client instead of proof of her own husband's infidelity. Dinner receipts, Le Bernardin, Danielle, Perse, all the restaurants where she and Jonathan used to celebrate anniversaries, promotions, milestones, now repurposed for his affair. Hotel receipts, the Mark, the Peninsula, the St. Regis, charged to Jonathan's personal credit card, the one she had access to but never checked because she had trusted him. The dates formed a pattern. 8 months, starting right around the time Sienna Clark had been hired as his executive assistant, starting when Rebecca had been 4 months pregnant. She had traced her finger over the timeline, her legal mind automatically organizing the information, calculating, strategizing. 4 months, she had said quietly. I was 4 months pregnant when it started. I'm so sorry, Rebecca. Rebecca had looked up at her friend. Don't be sorry. Be thorough. There's more, isn't there? You said on the phone there was more. Grace had hesitated, then pulled out a second set of documents. Bank statements, wire transfers, account numbers Rebecca didn't recognize. He's moving money, Grace had said. A lot of money. And that was when everything changed. That was when Rebecca Morrison stopped being a betrayed wife and became what she had always been. A warrior. Rebecca had studied the bank statements with the clinical precision that had made her one of the best attorneys in New York. Her emotions were locked away in a box she would deal with later. Right now, she needed to think, to analyze, to understand exactly what she was dealing with. The numbers were staggering. Wire transfers going back 6 months, right around the time Rebecca had announced her pregnancy to Jonathan. Right around the time she had shown him the positive test with tears of joy streaming down her face, believing they were about to start the family they had always talked about. When did this start exactly? Rebecca had asked, her finger tracing the first transaction. March 14th, Grace had said. The Monday after you told me you were pregnant. The Monday after. Rebecca had told Jonathan on a Friday night. They had been at dinner. She had surprised him with a gift-wrap box containing the pregnancy test. He had seemed happy, thrilled even, had picked her up and spun her around right there in the restaurant, had ordered champagne, sparkling cider for her, and toasted to their future. The following Monday, he had started moving money. How much? Rebecca had asked, though part of her didn't want to know. In total, approximately $47 million. $47 million. Nearly half of their liquid assets, gone, transferred to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, accounts she couldn't access, accounts she didn't even know existed. The baby had kicked. Rebecca had put her hand on her belly, a gesture that was becoming instinctive, a reminder that she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. There's more, Grace had said, pulling out another document. Of course there was more. Grace had laid out incorporation papers. Sienna Tech Solutions, established 4 months ago in Delaware. Sienna Clark listed as primary shareholder. Jonathan Whitmore listed as managing director. Rebecca had read the documents twice, 3 times, making sure she understood. He set up a company in her name, she had said slowly, and he's been transferring assets to it. Money, intellectual property from his own company, which is probably illegal, stock options, real estate holdings that were supposed to be marital property. He's building a new life. Rebecca's voice had been flat, emotionless. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder, harder. He's not just having an affair. He's systematically dismantling our marriage and using our money to do it. Grace had nodded. That's exactly what he's doing. Rebecca had stood up, walked to the window, looked out at Manhattan spread below at her. The city where she had built her career, where she had made her name, where she had been powerful before she had let a man make her forget her own strength. He encouraged me to quit working, Rebecca had said, the pieces falling into place. Focus on the baby. We don't need the money. Take some time. Enjoy being pregnant. He wanted you dependent. He wanted me vulnerable. Rebecca's hands had curled into fists. He wanted me so focused on the baby that I wouldn't notice what he was doing. Did he have you sign anything? Rebecca had closed her eyes, remembered. Papers. He brought me papers to sign. Routine documents, he said. Adjustments to our holdings. Updates to our accounts. I signed them. I was so tired all the time. So focused on the pregnancy, I trusted him. The admission tasted like ash. Grace had been quiet for a moment. Then she had said, "What do you want to do?" Rebecca had turned from the window, looked at her friend, at the evidence spread across her desk, at the documentation of her husband's betrayal and theft. What did she want to do? She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to go home and throw his clothes out the window and burn everything he had ever touched. But that wasn't who she was. That wasn't how she won. I want to destroy him, Rebecca had said quietly. Legally, completely, utterly. Grace had smiled, a fierce, proud smile. That's my girl. What's the first move? Rebecca had sat down at her desk, pulled out a notepad, started making a list, the way she used to when she was building a case, when she was planning strategy, when she was 3 steps ahead of everyone else. First, we need to document everything. I want copies of all of this, physical and digital, stored somewhere he can't access. Done. Second, I need to know exactly how much he's moved and where it went. Every account, every transfer, every asset he's hidden. I can dig deeper, but you're going to need someone who specializes in this. A forensic accountant. Rebecca had nodded, already knew who to call. Marcus Webb, the guy who helped you with the Richardson divorce? He found $38 million that Richardson's husband had hidden across 7 countries. If anyone can untangle this, it's Marcus. Rebecca had picked up her phone, scrolled through her contacts, found Marcus's number. Her finger had hovered over it for just a moment. This was it, the point of no return. Once she made this call, she was committing to war. The baby had kicked again, harder this time, as if saying, "Do it, mama, fight." Rebecca had pressed call. "Marcus, it's Rebecca Morrison. I need you to do something that requires absolute discretion." They had met in a coffee shop in Brooklyn the next day, far from Manhattan, far from anywhere Jonathan or his associates might see them, far from the life Rebecca had built with a man who was destroying her. Rebecca had arrived wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair in a messy bun, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She looked like any other pregnant woman grabbing coffee. Unremarkable, invisible, exactly what she wanted. Marcus Webb had been waiting in the back corner. 42 years old, khakis and a polo shirt. The kind of man you would never notice in a crowd, which was precisely what made him so good at his job. He found things people wanted hidden. He was a ghost who hunted ghosts. "Rebecca," he had stood when she approached, pulled out her chair like the gentleman he was. "You look good. Pregnancy suits you." "I look exhausted and I feel like a whale, but thank you for lying." She had sat down, adjusted her position to accommodate her belly. "Did you review what I sent you?" Marcus had pulled out a tablet, angled it so only they could see the screen. "I did, and I have to say your husband is either incredibly arrogant or incredibly stupid." "Both," Rebecca had said without hesitation. Marcus had smiled grimly. "He's been moving money for 6 months. 47 million to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Another 12 million to the Delaware Corporation under Sienna Clark's name. He's set up trusts, investment vehicles, shell companies. It's actually impressive in its scope. If it wasn't illegal and morally reprehensible, I'd be admiring his ambition." "Can you trace all of it?" "Already have. He's not as clever as he thinks he is. He used the same law firm for all the paperwork. Left a trail a mile wide. Probably thought you'd never look, that you were too busy being pregnant to notice." His mistake. "Here's the thing," Marcus had continued. "These transfers violate your prenuptial agreement. Community property laws. They constitute fraud, possibly tax evasion depending on how he's reporting them. And the timing, doing this while you were pregnant, any judge is going to see that as particularly egregious." "Can we freeze it?" Rebecca had asked. The most important question. "All of it?" Marcus had looked at her, really looked at her. "Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. He'll know you know. He'll know you've moved against him. It's going to get ugly, Rebecca. Very ugly." Rebecca had put both hands on her belly, felt the baby moving. Her daughter, she was convinced it was a girl, though they were waiting to find out for sure. Her daughter, who deserved better than a father who would steal from her mother, who deserved better than parents who hated each other, who deserved a mother strong enough to fight. "It's already ugly," Rebecca had said. "I just want it to be fair." Marcus had nodded, respect in his eyes. "Then yes, we can freeze everything. We file an emergency motion for asset protection. We cite the pregnancy, the fraudulent transfers, the flight risk. We get a temporary restraining order on all accounts pending the outcome of divorce proceedings." Divorce. Rebecca had said the word out loud for the first time. Made it real. "I'm really doing this." "You're really doing this. How long will it take? If we file Friday afternoon right before the courts close for the weekend, the order could be in place by Monday morning before he even knows what hit him. He'll try to access an account, and it'll be frozen. He'll call his banker, and they'll tell him there's a court order. By the time he figures out what happened, it'll be too late." Rebecca had leaned back in her chair, processed, calculated. This was chess. She needed to think 3 moves ahead. 5 moves ahead, 10 moves ahead. Do it, she had said. File everything Friday. I want this locked down before he can move another dollar. Marcus had started typing on his tablet. You'll need an attorney, a good one. I know exactly who I'm going to call. Rebecca? Marcus had looked up. He's going to fight back. He's going to hire the best attorneys money can buy. He's going to try to paint you as unstable, vindictive, trying to trap him with a baby. It's going to get nasty. Good, Rebecca had said. Let him try. He forgot who I was before I became his wife. He forgot what I'm capable of. That's his mistake, not mine. She had stood up, put her sunglasses back on, prepared to walk back out into her carefully constructed double life, the loving wife planning a vow renewal while secretly preparing for war. Thank you, Marcus. Thank me when we win. Rebecca had smiled, a real smile, the first in days. Oh, we're going to win. That's not a question. The only question is how completely I'm going to destroy him. David Patterson's office was on the 42nd floor of a building in Midtown, with views that stretched from the Hudson River to the East River. Corner office, mahogany desk, leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars. The trappings of success in the cutthroat world of high-stakes divorce law. Rebecca had chosen him carefully. David was 52 years old with silver hair and a smile that could cut glass. He was ruthless, brilliant, the attorney other attorneys feared. The kind of man who didn't just win cases, he destroyed opposing counsel. Exactly what she needed. She had scheduled the appointment for Thursday afternoon, telling Jonathan she had a doctor's visit. Not entirely a lie, she had stopped by Dr. Brennan's office first, got her blood pressure checked, listened to the baby's heartbeat, sat through a lecture about stress and prenatal health. If only Dr. Brennan knew what was causing the stress. Rebecca Morrison. David had stood when she entered, shook her hand. I was surprised to get your call. I've followed your career. You're excellent at what you do, or what you used to do, before you stepped back. Temporarily stepped back, Rebecca had corrected, already feeling more like herself in this environment. The law office, the strategy session. This was her world. I'm planning to return after the baby. Good, you're too talented to waste. He had gestured to a chair. So, tell me about Jonathan Whitmore. Rebecca had spent the next hour laying out everything, the affair, the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the systematic theft of marital assets, the timing, starting the moment she announced her pregnancy. David had listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When she finished, he had sat back in his chair, steepled his fingers. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of marital fraud I've seen, he had said, and I've seen a lot. He's not even trying to hide it properly. He's arrogant, thinks he's smarter than everyone else, thinks you won't find out. His mistake. Indeed. David had pulled up a document on his computer, turned the screen so she could see. Here's what we're going to do. We file tomorrow at 4:55 p.m. The courts close at 5. By the time he gets wind of it, if he gets wind of it before the weekend, everything will be locked down. He won't be able to access any accounts without court approval. What about his business accounts, the company accounts? We'll freeze the personal accounts and any accounts that contain marital assets. That includes the offshore accounts in the Delaware Corporation, since those were funded with marital money. His business accounts should be separate, but we'll get court orders for discovery. Force him to open his books. I guarantee we'll find more irregularities. Rebecca had nodded. This was good. This was a plan. This was taking back control. He's going to fight, she had said. Of course he will. He's going to hire the best defense attorneys. He's going to try every tactic in the book. He'll claim you're being vindictive, that you're trying to trap him, that you're using the pregnancy as a weapon. David had leaned forward. But here's the thing. We have the truth on our side. We have documentation. We have evidence of fraud. And you're 7 months pregnant. No judge is going to look kindly on a man who's stealing from his pregnant wife. What about custody? David's expression had softened slightly. That's going to be harder. New York favors joint custody. But given his behavior, given the financial fraud, given everything, we'll push for primary physical custody with visitation rights for him. Supervised at first, if we can make the case that his behavior shows poor judgment. Rebecca's hand had gone to her belly. The thought of Jonathan having unsupervised time with her baby made her stomach turn. But she had to be realistic. He was the father. Unless he was proven unfit, he would have rights. What are my chances, she had asked. The question every client asked. The question that couldn't be answered with certainty but had to be addressed anyway. Of winning the divorce? 95%. Of getting a favorable settlement? 90%. Of getting primary custody? 75%, maybe 80% if we can show a pattern of behavior that suggests he's not putting the child's interest first. David had paused. But Rebecca, you know how this works. You know there are no guarantees. You know it's going to be ugly and painful and expensive. Are you prepared for that? Was Yoshi? Rebecca had thought about it, really thought about the life she had imagined with Jonathan, the family they were supposed to be, the future that was crumbling. But then she had thought about the lavender, the receipts, the offshore accounts, the company in Sienna's name, the systematic, calculated destruction of everything they had built together. She had thought about teaching her daughter that it was okay to be treated this way, that women should stay quiet, accept betrayal, smile and pretend everything was fine while their world burned. Yes, Rebecca had said, I'm prepared. David had smiled. Then let's destroy him. The next week was a masterclass in deception. Rebecca had gone home every night to the penthouse she shared with Jonathan, the 10,000 square foot space overlooking Central Park, the home they had decorated together, the life they had built. She had smiled, made conversation, asked about his day at the office, listened to him lie about meetings and conference calls and business dinners, all while knowing that in 48 hours his world would explode. Wednesday night he had actually come home for dinner, a rare occurrence these days. He had brought flowers, white roses, her favorites, or at least they used to be before they became associated with guilt. You look beautiful, he had said, kissing her cheek, the first physical contact in weeks. How's the baby? Active, Rebecca had said, putting his hand on her belly, letting him feel the kicks, playing the role of loving wife. I think she's training for the Olympics in there. She, Jonathan had smiled. You think it's a girl? Just a feeling. They had eaten dinner together. Pasta primavera she had cooked, something she rarely did anymore. They had talked about the vow renewal, the final details, the guest list, planning a celebration that would never happen. Jonathan had seemed relaxed, happy even, completely unaware that his wife had spent the afternoon with the divorce attorney, that tomorrow at 4:55 p.m. his entire life would change. I love you, he had said before going to bed. In the guest room, always the guest room now, Rebecca had stood in their bedroom, her bedroom, and whispered to the empty space, no, you don't, but that's okay, because I don't love you anymore either. Thursday had been the longest day of her life. Rebecca had gone through the motions. Prenatal yoga class at 9 a.m. Lunch with Caroline at noon to finalize the seating chart. The seating chart for a ceremony that would never happen. A manicure at 3. Normal activities for a woman preparing for her vow renewal, all while watching the clock tick toward 4:55. At 4:45, she had been sitting in a Starbucks near David Patterson's office. Her phone had buzzed. David, filing now. It's done. Rebecca had stared at the message. 3 words that changed everything. It's done. No going back now. She had put her hand on her belly, felt the baby kick. Here we go, she had whispered. Here we go. Friday had been quiet, too quiet. Rebecca had woken up expecting something, a call, a text, some indication that Jonathan had found out. Nothing. She had gone about her day, coffee with Grace, who had brought more evidence, photos of Jonathan and Sienna at a restaurant in Brooklyn, holding hands across the table, email chains discussing their future together, a lease for an apartment in Tribeca, signed by both of them. They had been planning this for months. How are you holding up? Grace had asked. I'm numb, Rebecca had admitted. I feel like I should be crying or screaming or something, but I just feel nothing. That's shock. It'll hit you later. I don't have time for it to hit me later. I have a baby coming in 3 months. I need to be strong. Grace had squeezed her hand. You are strong, the strongest person I know. You're going to get through this. Friday evening had come and gone. Still nothing from Jonathan. Saturday morning, Rebecca had been folding baby clothes in the nursery when her phone had rung. David Patterson. It's done, he had said. Every account is frozen. He tried to make a transfer this morning. His bank called him. He knows. Rebecca's heart had started racing. And? And he called his attorney, who called me, who very politely informed me that this was a mistake and we needed to reverse it immediately. What did you say? I told him to read the court order. Your husband committed fraud. He's lucky we're not pressing criminal charges. Yet, Rebecca had sat down in the rocking chair, the one meant for feeding her baby, for quiet moments of bonding. How long until he comes here? She had asked. I'd say you have about an hour, maybe less. Rebecca, you don't have to be there. You can go to your mother's, to Grace's, somewhere safe. But Rebecca had looked around the nursery, at the room she had prepared, at the life she had imagined. No, she had said, this is my home. I'm not running. Then be prepared. He's going to be angry. Rebecca had ended the call, stood up, walked through the penthouse to the living room, looked out at Central Park stretched below. She had been prepared for a lot of things in her life. Law school exams, court cases, making partner, pregnancy. She had not been prepared for this, but she was ready anyway. Rebecca had been in the nursery folding tiny yellow blankets when she heard it. The sound of the front door slamming open, not just opening, slamming hard enough that she heard the impact from 3 rooms away, hard enough that a picture frame on the nursery wall rattled. Footsteps, heavy, angry, coming toward her like a storm. Jonathan appeared in the doorway. His face was red. His hands were clenched into fists. His eyes were wild. She had never seen him look like this. In 10 years of marriage, through arguments and disagreements and tense moments, she had never seen him lose control. He was losing control now. What the hell did you do? His voice was barely human, a roar that made Rebecca's hands still on the blanket she was folding. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she finished folding the blanket, smoothed it carefully, set it on top of the stack in the dresser drawer, moved deliberately, calmly, taking back power through small acts of control. I protected our child's future, she said finally. Her voice was steady, quiet, the eye of the hurricane responding to the storm. You froze our accounts. All of them. Do you have any idea what you've done? Rebecca turned to face him. Really look at him. This man she had loved. This man she had married. This man she had trusted with everything. This man who had betrayed her in every way possible. I protected the $47 million you were planning to steal from me, she said. Jonathan went very still, the kind of stillness that came before violence or revelation. For a moment, Rebecca wondered if she had made a mistake, if she should have listened to David and gone somewhere safe. But she held her ground, stood in the nursery of their unborn child and faced him. What are you talking about? His voice had changed, softer now, conciliatory, the voice he used when he wanted something, when he was trying to manipulate. Rebecca, this is crazy. You're not making sense. The offshore accounts, Rebecca said, the wire transfers, the $47 million you moved to the Cayman Islands, the company you set up in Sienna's name. Should I go on? She watched the color drain from his face, watched him calculate, watched him try to figure out how much she knew, how long she had known, how thoroughly he had been caught. You're overreacting, he said. The gaslighting playbook, step 1. Sienna is just a colleague. Those transfers were business investments. You're confused. Don't, Rebecca's voice was sharp, cutting. Don't you dare insult me by lying. Not now. Not after everything. I know about the affair. I know about the money. I know about the apartment in Tribeca. I know about all of it, Jonathan. His expression shifted, from conciliatory to cold in the span of a heartbeat, the mask falling away, the real Jonathan emerging. You've been spying on me, he said, accusatory, as if she was the one in the wrong. I've been protecting myself. You've invaded my privacy, violated my trust. His voice was rising again. How dare you? Rebecca laughed. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of it. The sheer breathtaking audacity of him playing the victim. How dare I? She moved toward him, her pregnant belly between them like a physical reminder of what was at stake. How dare I discover that my husband is stealing from me? How dare I find out about the affair? How dare I protect myself and our child from a man who's been systematically destroying our life together? You're being irrational. Pregnancy hormones. Pregnancy hormones didn't create those hotel receipts, Jonathan. Pregnancy hormones didn't wire $47 million to offshore accounts. Pregnancy hormones didn't set up a company in your mistress's name. They stood there, 3 feet apart. Husband and wife. Enemies now and everything but paperwork. You don't understand, Jonathan said. His voice had a desperate edge now. You don't understand what it's like to feel trapped, to feel like you're drowning in expectations, in obligations, in a life you didn't choose anymore. And you don't understand what it's like to grow a human being inside your body while the person who's supposed to love you is planning your destruction. I never meant to hurt you. You just meant to steal from me. Leave me penniless. Humiliate me, but not hurt me. Of course not. Jonathan's jaw clenched. This isn't who I am. I met someone who makes me feel alive again, who sees me, really sees me. Sienna is 26 years old. She sees a billionaire who can advance her career. That's all. You don't know her. I know women like her. I've represented dozens of them in divorce cases. She's not special, Jonathan. She's just young and available, and you're having a midlife crisis. His hands clenched into fists again. For a moment, Rebecca thought he might actually hit her, but he didn't. Just stood there, trembling with rage and frustration and the realization that he had lost control of the situation. I want a divorce, he said finally. Rebecca nodded. I know, I filed 2 weeks ago. The shock on his face would have been satisfying if everything wasn't so painful. What? He whispered. Did you really think I'd wait for you to blindside me? Did you really think I was that stupid? That naive? Rebecca moved to the window, put her hand on her belly, felt the babe kick in response to her elevated heart rate. I found out about Sienna. I found out about the money. I hired the best forensic accountant in New York to track every dollar you stole. I froze every account, and I filed for divorce. 2 weeks ago, while you were busy planning how to destroy me, I was destroying you. Jonathan stared at her like he'd never seen her before. You can't do this. I already did. I'll fight you. I'll fight for everything, the money, the assets, the baby. Good luck with that. Rebecca turned to face him. You've committed fraud. You've hidden marital assets. You've violated our prenuptial agreement. You've done all of it while I was pregnant with your child. And you want to know the best part? Your mother knows. Caroline knows everything, and she's willing to testify against you. That hit him harder than anything else. She could see it in his eyes, the betrayal, the shock. My mother wouldn't. Your mother is tired of watching you destroy women the way your father destroyed her. She's on my side, Jonathan, not yours. He looked around the nursery, at the crib they had picked out together, at the changing table, at the rocking chair, at all the preparations for a life they would never have. This isn't over, he said. His voice was cold now, controlled. The business voice. You think you're clever. You think you've won, but I have resources you can't imagine. I have attorneys. I have connections. I will fight you on every single point. I will make your life hell. You already have, Rebecca said quietly. The difference is, now I'm fighting back. Jonathan moved toward the door, stopped, looked back at her one last time. I used to love you, he said. I don't know when that changed, but it did, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I don't love you anymore. Rebecca put both hands on her belly, protected the baby from his words, from his presence, from everything he represented. I'm not sorry, she said. I'm not sorry you don't love me, because I don't love you anymore either, and I'm going to raise our child to be everything you're not. Honest, kind, strong. They're going to know what integrity looks like, what real love looks like, and they're going to know that their mother fought for them when their father was too selfish to care. Jonathan's face twisted. With anger or pain or regret, Rebecca couldn't tell and didn't care. He left, slammed the door. The sound echoed through the penthouse, through the nursery, through the life they had built and destroyed. Rebecca stood there for a long moment, alone, pregnant, victorious and devastated in equal measure. Then she did what she always did when overwhelmed. When her emotions threatened to break through the wall she had built, she watered the plants, the small succulent on the windowsill, the peace lily in the corner, the tiny terrarium she had set up for the baby to look at someday. Each plant received exactly the right amount of water. Each was tended to with care, small acts of nurturing when everything else was breaking. The baby kicked, hard enough to take her breath away. Rebecca sat down in the rocking chair, put both hands on her belly, closed her eyes. "We're okay," she whispered to her unborn child. "We're going to be okay, better than okay, I promise." And for the first time since this nightmare began, she believed it. Grace had arrived an hour later with coffee, decaf for Rebecca, and bagels and a new folder. Of course there was a new folder. There was always more. They sat in the living room, Rebecca on the couch, her feet propped up on the ottoman because her ankles were swelling. Grace in the armchair, that fierce protective energy radiating from her like armor. "You need to see this," Grace said, sliding the folder across the coffee table. "And I'm warning you now, it's bad." "How much worse can it get?" Rebecca asked. But she was already reaching for the folder, already steeling herself for whatever fresh hell waited inside. "Read it," Grace said quietly. Rebecca opened the folder. Inside were printouts, email chains between Jonathan and Sienna, discussing not just their affair, but their future, their plans, their life together after Rebecca was out of the picture. Flight confirmations to Bora Bora. Hotel bookings at the St. Regis. And a timeline, detailed, specific, cold. They were planning a wedding, Jonathan and Sienna's wedding, scheduled for November 27th, 2 months from now, exactly 1 week after Rebecca's due date. Rebecca stared at the documents, at the venue descriptions, at the guest list, Jonathan's business associates, Sienna's friends, people from their world. Not a single person from Rebecca's life. At the carefully calculated timeline. They had been planning to wait for Rebecca to give birth. Wait until she was at her most vulnerable, postpartum, exhausted, hormonal, overwhelmed with a newborn. Then serve her with divorce papers. Take everything they had carefully hidden. Disappear to their new life while Rebecca was left alone with a baby and nothing. "There's more," Grace said. Her voice was tight, controlled, the way it got when she was furious but trying to stay professional. Rebecca looked up. "How can there possibly be more?" Grace pulled out another document, laid it on top of the wedding plans, medical records, Sienna Clark's medical records. "How did you get these?" Rebecca asked. "You don't want to know, but look at the date." Rebecca looked, saw the clinic name, the procedure listed, the timing, pregnancy confirmation, 8 weeks. The date was from last week. "Sienna's pregnant," Grace said. 8 weeks along. The world tilted. Rebecca put her hand on the couch to steady herself. The baby, her baby, kicked inside her as if responding to her mother's distress. "He got her pregnant," Rebecca whispered. "While I was pregnant with his child, he got his mistress pregnant." "It gets worse," Grace said. She pointed to another section of the medical records. "Look at the notes," Rebecca read. Her hands started shaking. "Patient reports this is a planned pregnancy. Patient and partner have discussed timeline to coordinate with partner's pending divorce." Planned. They had planned this. While Rebecca was 6 months pregnant, carrying Jonathan's child, he and Sienna had deliberately gotten pregnant, had discussed the timeline, had coordinated it with the divorce. "He has 2 babies coming," Rebecca said. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. 2. And he planned both pregnancies. Mine to, what? Secure his image, and hers to start his real family, Grace finished. "With the woman he actually wants." "Rebecca, I'm so sorry." Rebecca stood up. Too fast, the room spun. Grace was there immediately, steadying her. Rebecca started, but didn't finish. Didn't know how to finish. What did she need? To scream, to cry, to set fire to everything Jonathan owned? "What do you need?" Grace asked gently. "I don't know." Rebecca pressed her hands to her face, breathed, counted to 10. I don't know. I can't. The baby kicked again, insistent, demanding attention. And suddenly Rebecca couldn't be in this room anymore. Couldn't be in this penthouse. Couldn't be surrounded by the life she had built with a man who had 2 children on the way with 2 different women, like it was just another business strategy. I need to go, she said. I need to get out of here. Where? I'll drive you. I don't know. Anywhere, just I can't be here. They ended up at Rebecca's childhood home in Brooklyn, the brownstone where Margaret Morrison still lived, where Rebecca had grown up, where she had learned what strength looked like from a mother who had raised her alone after her father died. Margaret had taken one look at Rebecca's face and pulled her into her arms. What happened? She asked. Sienna's pregnant, Rebecca said, and then she started crying, really crying for the first time since this nightmare began, crying for the marriage that was over, for the future that would never happen, for the baby who would grow up in a broken home, for the man she had loved who had become someone she didn't recognize. Margaret had held her, stroked her hair, let her cry. Grace had made tea. The three of them sat around the kitchen table, the same table where Rebecca had done homework, had college application conversations, had told her mother she was getting married. Tell me everything, Margaret said. So Rebecca did. The affair, the money, the offshore accounts, the wedding plans, the second to pregnancy, all of it, every painful detail. Margaret listened without interrupting. When Rebecca finished, she reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know. Rebecca felt exhausted, drained, like the crying had taken everything out of her. I'm 7 months pregnant. My husband is having a baby with another woman. He's planned a wedding with her for right after I give birth. He's stolen millions of dollars. And I feel, she paused, tried to find the words. I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. Like I've lost myself completely. No, Margaret said firmly. You haven't lost yourself. You've just forgotten temporarily, but you're still in there. The woman who made partner at 32, the woman who never lost a case, the woman who is strong enough to do what needs to be done. I'm scared, Mom. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Fear keeps you from getting complacent, but don't let it paralyze you. Margaret squeezed her hand. You know what you have to do. What? Win. You're going to win this, not for revenge, not because you're angry, but because it's right. Because that baby, she pointed to Rebecca's belly, deserves a mother who fought for her. Because you deserve a life free from a man who doesn't value you. Because you are worth more than this. Rebecca put her free hand on her belly, felt the baby kick. Her daughter. She was sure now. Her daughter who would know what it meant to be strong, to fight. To refuse to be a victim. I'm going to destroy him, Rebecca said quietly. No, sweetheart, Margaret smiled. You're going to free yourself. There's a difference. That night, Rebecca stayed at her mother's house. Couldn't face going back to the penthouse. Couldn't face the nursery she had prepared. The life she had imagined. She lay in her childhood bedroom, in the twin bed where she had slept for 18 years before college. The walls were still painted the same soft blue. Her debate team trophies still lined the bookshelf, a reminder of who she had been before Jonathan Whitmore. The baby was active, kicking, moving, restless, like Rebecca herself. Rebecca put both hands on her belly, whispered into the darkness, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry I brought you into this mess. You deserve better. You deserve a father who loves you, who wants you, who puts you first. The baby kicked in response. But you have me, Rebecca continued, and I swear to you, I will fight for you. I will protect you. I will make sure you grow up knowing that you are loved, that you are wanted, that you are worth fighting for. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. The message was from Sienna. We need to talk, please, just 5 minutes. I'll come to you, wherever you want. Rebecca stared at the message. The woman who had slept with her husband, who was carrying his child, who had helped him plan Rebecca's destruction. Every instinct said to delete the message, block the number, forget Sienna Clark existed beyond what she represented, betrayal and theft in the end of Rebecca's marriage. But curiosity won. Or maybe exhaustion. Or maybe the small, persistent voice that said there might be something worth hearing. Rebecca typed back, Montague Street Coffee Shop. Tomorrow at 10. You have 5 minutes. Then she put the phone down, closed her eyes, tried to sleep, and failed completely. Rebecca arrived at the coffee shop at 9:55. 5 minutes early, always early. The habit of an attorney who used every small advantage. She ordered decaf, what she'd been drinking for 7 months now, this pale imitation of real coffee that did nothing to combat the exhaustion. She chose a table in the back, away from the windows, private, but not isolated. At exactly 10 o'clock, Sienna Clark walked through the door. Rebecca had seen her before, of course, at company events, holiday parties. That one time Sienna had come to the penthouse to drop off documents Jonathan absolutely needed on a Saturday night. Always polished, always perfect, hair and makeup flawless, designer clothes that fit like they were made for her. The woman who walked in now looked nothing like that. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, eyes red and swollen like she'd been crying for days. She looked, Rebecca thought, with something like satisfaction, like hell. Sienna ordered a decaf latte, Rebecca noted, because of course she was pregnant too, and sat down across from Rebecca, fidgeted with her cup, wouldn't meet Rebecca's eyes. Thank you for meeting me, Sienna said. Her voice was small, scared, nothing like the confident woman Rebecca had observed from afar. Rebecca said nothing, just waited. Let the silence stretch. Let Sienna squirm. I'm sorry, Sienna said finally. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know you have no reason to believe me or care what I have to say, but I am. I'm so sorry for everything. Still, Rebecca waited. I didn't know, Sienna continued, her words tumbling out faster now, desperate. About the money, the offshore accounts, the fraud. I swear to you, I had no idea. Jonathan told me, he said you were controlling, that you'd refused to have children for years and then changed your mind to trap him, that you were making his life miserable, that the marriage was already over, you just wouldn't admit it. And you believed him, Rebecca said. Not a question, a statement. I was stupid. I'm 26. He's this successful, brilliant, powerful man, and he was paying attention to me, making me feel special, making me feel seen. Sienna's hands shook around her coffee cup. I believed every word because I wanted to believe it, because it made me feel like I mattered. Rebecca studied her. This young woman who had seemed so threatening, so polished, so perfect. She just looked sad now, sad and scared and very, very young. You're 26 years old, Rebecca said. You're not stupid. You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew he was married. You knew I was pregnant. You chose to sleep with him anyway. You're right. Sienna looked up, met Rebecca's eyes for the first time. You're absolutely right. I knew. And I did it anyway. I told myself it was love, that it was fate, that we couldn't help it. But the truth is, I knew. And I did it anyway because I wanted what I wanted, and I didn't care who I hurt to get it. At least she was honest. Rebecca had to give her that. What do you want from me? Rebecca asked. Why am I here? Sienna pulled out a folder, set it on the table between them. I'm cooperating with the federal investigation, giving them everything, emails, records, text messages, conversations, all of it. I wanted you to know, and I wanted to, she paused, swallowed. I wanted to tell you the truth about Jonathan. What truth? There are others, other women, at least 3 that I know of, all of them young, all of them employees or business associates, all of them thinking they're special, thinking he loves them, thinking they're going to be the one he leaves you for. Rebecca felt her stomach turn. 3? Maybe more, I don't know. I just know about 3 for sure. Sienna pushed the folder toward Rebecca. I have evidence, emails, photos, receipts, everything. I'm giving it to the investigators, but I wanted you to have it too. Rebecca opened the folder, saw the names, the faces, women barely older than Sienna, all beautiful, all accomplished, all believing Jonathan Whitmore's lies. Why are you telling me this? Rebecca asked. Because you deserve to know the truth. And because Sienna put her hand on her still flat belly, a mirror of Rebecca's gesture. Because I'm pregnant with his child, and I just found out I'm not special. I'm not the one. I'm just another woman he's using. And when this baby is born, he's going to do to me exactly what he's doing to you. There was something almost darkly funny about it. Two pregnant women, both carrying Jonathan Whitmore's children, both realizing they'd been played. What are you going to do, Rebecca asked her, about the baby? I don't know. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. I'm 8 weeks along. I thought we talked about it, about having a baby together, about building a life. And now I find out there are 3 other women, and you and the federal investigation. And I'm implicated because my name is on those accounts. The IRS is coming after me for tax fraud. Everything is falling apart. Rebecca should have felt satisfaction, schadenfreude, some sense of justice watching Sienna's world crumble the way hers had. Instead, she felt tired, so tired. I accept your apology, Rebecca said finally. Not because I forgive you, I don't, not yet, maybe not ever, but because I understand what it's like to be deceived by Jonathan Whitmore. I understand what it's like to believe his lies. And I'm done carrying anger for a man who doesn't deserve any more of my energy. Sienna looked shocked, like she had expected rage, screaming, anything but this quiet acceptance. Thank you, she whispered. Rebecca stood up, prepared to leave, to go back to her mother's house, to the life she was building from the ashes of her marriage. Rebecca, Sienna called after her. Rebecca turned back. How do you do it? How do you stay strong? Because I feel like I'm falling apart, and you seem together. Rebecca put her hand on her belly, felt the baby kick, her daughter, her reason for fighting. I don't have a choice, she said simply. I have a child to protect. And that means being stronger than I feel, being better than I want to be, fighting when all I want to do is give up. She paused. You'll understand when your baby is born. Motherhood doesn't give you the luxury of falling apart. She left Sienna sitting there in the coffee shop, left with the folder full of evidence, left with more pieces of the puzzle of who Jonathan Whitmore really was, and went back to the war she was fighting. The call came that evening. Rebecca was at her mother's house, eating dinner. Margaret had made pot roast, comfort food, the kind of meal that said, I love you without words, when her phone rang. Caroline Whitmore. Rebecca almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Rebecca? Caroline's voice was tight, controlled, the way it got when she was containing emotion. We need to talk. It's important. I'm listening. Not on the phone, in person. Please, I know I have no right to ask, but please, it's about Jonathan. There's something you need to know. Rebecca looked at her mother, who nodded, supportive, trusting Rebecca's judgment. When? Rebecca asked. Now, tonight if you can. I'll come to you, wherever you are. Rebecca gave her Margaret's address, hung up, looked at her mother. Caroline Whitmore is coming here, she said. She says there's something I need to know about Jonathan. Do you trust her? Margaret asked. I don't know, Rebecca said honestly, but I want to hear what she has to say. Carolyn arrived 30 minutes later. She looked older than Rebecca had ever seen her. The perfect facade of Upper East Side elegance was cracking. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the puffiness around her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly as Margaret showed her to the living room. Thank you for seeing me, Caroline said, sitting on the edge of the couch like she might bolt at any moment. I know you have every reason to refuse. You said it was important, Rebecca replied, settling into the armchair across from her. Margaret had discreetly disappeared into the kitchen, giving them privacy but staying close enough if Rebecca needed her. Caroline pulled an envelope from her purse, set it on the coffee table between them with the care of someone handling evidence, which Rebecca realized was exactly what it was. I've known about Sienna for 2 months, Caroline began. I found out by accident. Saw them together at a restaurant where they thought no one would recognize them. I confronted Jonathan. He told me, she paused, composed herself. He told me what he tells all his women, that he was unhappy, that you were controlling, that the marriage was over. But you knew better, Rebecca said. I've been married to a Whitmore man for 43 years. I know their patterns. I know their wrongs. I know exactly how they justify their behavior. Caroline's voice was brittle. My husband had affairs, many of them. I turned a blind eye because that's what women of my generation did. We protected the family name. We maintained appearances. We suffered in silence. She opened the envelope, pulled out documents. But I won't watch my son do the same thing. I won't watch him destroy you the way my husband nearly destroyed me. And I certainly won't watch him destroy my grandchild's mother. Rebecca took the documents, bank statements, but not Jonathan's. These were from the Whitmore Family Trust, the charitable foundation that had been established by Jonathan's grandfather. Millions of dollars designated for philanthropic purposes, and Jonathan had been stealing from it. He's been embezzling from the family trust for over a year, Caroline said, long before Sienna, long before your pregnancy, using the money to fund his lifestyle, his affairs, his schemes. Rebecca studied the transfers, $12 million, $15 million, $8 million, all moved to accounts she recognized now. The same offshore accounts, the same shell companies. This is massive fraud, Rebecca said, against his own family's foundation. I know, I've documented everything. I'm prepared to testify. In your divorce proceedings, in the federal investigation, in whatever it takes to stop him. Rebecca looked up sharply. Wait, Hattie, he's your son. Carolyn's composure finally cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. Because he's become his father. And I won't enable it anymore. I spent 43 years making excuses. 43 years protecting a man who didn't deserve it. 43 years sacrificing my dignity, my self-respect, my peace of mind for the Whitmore name. She reached across and took Rebecca's hand. But you're fighting back. You're not accepting it. You're not making excuses. And I admire that. I envy that. I wish I had been strong enough to do what you're doing 40 years ago. This will destroy your relationship with Jonathan, Rebecca said carefully. My relationship with Jonathan is already destroyed. He's not the son I raised. Or maybe he is and I just didn't want to see it. Either way, I can't protect him anymore. Not when it means watching him hurt you. Hurt my grandchild. Hurt all the women he's deceiving. Rebecca felt something shift. The isolation that had consumed her for weeks was easing. She wasn't alone. She had allies. Her mother, Grace, and now, surprisingly, Caroline. What do you need from me? Rebecca asked. Nothing. I need to do this for myself as much as for you. Carolyn stood, smoothed her skirt, the perfect society matron composure returning. My attorney will be in touch with yours. I'll provide everything I have. And Rebecca, yes? I know I have no right to ask this, but when the baby comes, I would like to be part of their life, if you'll allow it, supervised, limited, whatever terms you set. I don't want to lose my grandchild because of my son's mistakes. Rebecca thought about it, about her own mother, about how important family was, about how her daughter deserved to know her grandmother, even if her father was a criminal. We'll figure something out, Rebecca said. After everything is settled, after the dust clears, we'll talk about it. Carolyn's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you. You're far more generous than I deserve. After Caroline left, Margaret came back into the room, sat beside Rebecca on the couch. Are you okay? She asked. I think so. Rebecca leaned against her mother's shoulder. This is so strange. Jonathan's own mother is testifying against him. His mistress is cooperating with investigators. His business partner will probably turn on him too once he realizes how deep the fraud goes. Everyone is abandoning him. Good, Margaret said firmly. He deserves it. But what does it say about me that I married him? That I loved him? That I was going to renew my vows with him? It says you're human. It says you believed in love and commitment and the possibility of happily ever after. There's nothing wrong with that. The fault isn't in believing. The fault is in his betrayal of that belief. Rebecca put her hand on her belly. The baby was quiet now, resting, gathering strength for whatever came next. I'm scared, Mom, Rebecca admitted. Not of the divorce, not of the legal battle. I can win that. I know I can. But I'm scared of being a single mother, of raising a child alone, of my daughter growing up without a father who loves her. You're not alone. You have me. You have Grace. You even have Caroline, apparently, and your daughter will have love. So much love from all of us. That's what matters. Not whether her father is present, but whether she's surrounded by people who will fight for her, protect her, show her what real love looks like. Rebecca closed her eyes, let herself feel the fear, the uncertainty, the grief for the future she had imagined, and then she let it go. Because in 3 days she had a vow renewal ceremony to attend, or rather to destroy, and she needed to be ready. The morning of the ceremony, Rebecca woke in her childhood bedroom at 6 a.m. The sun was barely up. The house was quiet, but she was wide awake, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Today was the day. She spent an hour in the shower. Let the hot water ease the tension in her shoulders, the ache in her lower back from carrying a 7.5-month pregnancy. She washed her hair, shaved her legs, a feat of gymnastics given her belly, moisturized, prepared, wore paint for a different kind of battle. Margaret made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, fruit, protein for energy. Rebecca ate mechanically, her mind already at the plaza. Already walking down that aisle, and already seeing Jonathan's face when he realized what was happening. Grace arrived at 8 with the dress, the cream silk that had been made for a celebration. Now it would be worn for a revelation. "You sure about this?" Grace asked as she helped Rebecca into the dress, carefully adjusting it over her pregnant belly. "I'm sure," Rebecca said. "You could just not show up. Let him stand there waiting." "That would be humiliating too." Rebecca looked at herself in the mirror, at the woman staring back. 7 months pregnant, about to publicly destroy her husband's carefully constructed plans. "No," she said. "He wanted to make this public. He wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. So I'm going to give him what he wants, just not the way he expects." Margaret came in, helped with Rebecca's hair, loose waves just like they'd planned, diamond earrings, the ones Jonathan had given her, a reminder of everything he was about to lose. "You look beautiful," Margaret said, "strong, ready." "I am ready," Rebecca agreed. David Patterson called at 9. "Final check. You're really doing this?" "I'm really doing this. The media will be there. This is going to be everywhere. You understand that?" "I'm counting on it." David laughed, a sharp, satisfied sound. "You're going to be magnificent. Call me when it's done." At 9:30, a car arrived. Not the hired limo that was supposed to take Rebecca to the plaza. A simple black sedan, driven by one of David's associates. Unremarkable, unnoticeable. Rebecca, Margaret, and Grace got in. "Are you nervous?" Grace asked as they drove through Brooklyn toward Manhattan. "Terrified," Rebecca admitted, "but also excited. Is that wrong?" "No," Margaret said. "It's justice, and justice should feel good." They arrived at the plaza at 10:15. The ceremony was scheduled for 11. Guests would be arriving soon. Jonathan would be in the groom's suite, preparing. Thinking Rebecca was in the bridal suite, preparing to walk down the aisle and recommit to their marriage. Instead, she was in a service hallway with her mother and best friend, going over the plan one final time. "You sure you don't want me to come with you?" Grace asked. "I need to do this alone," Rebecca said, "but stay close. I'll need you after." She hugged them both, drew strength from their presence, their love, their unwavering support. Then she walked to the bridal suite, through the door she had left 3 weeks ago, through the bathroom where she had overheard Jonathan planning her humiliation. Full circle, she stood there in the cream silk dress, 7 months pregnant, and remembered the woman who had stood here 3 weeks ago. Shocked, devastated, broken. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who had remembered her own power, someone who was about to take it back. Rebecca checked her phone. 10:45. In 15 minutes, guests would be seated. In 30 minutes, the ceremony would begin. In 35 minutes, Jonathan Whitmore's world would end. She was ready. At exactly 11 o'clock, Rebecca walked into the ballroom. The plaza's grand ballroom was magnificent. 300 seats arranged in perfect rows. Flowers, peonies, cream and gold, just like they'd planned, adorning every surface. String quartet playing softly. Crystal chandeliers catching the afternoon light. and 300 guests. New York's elite, business associates, society friends, everyone who mattered in their world, everyone who would witness what happened next. Jonathan stood at the altar, 38 years old, handsome in his custom tuxedo, the picture of success, confidence, control. He hadn't seen her yet, was talking to the officiant, smoothing his tie, preparing for his moment, for his public declaration, for his carefully orchestrated humiliation of his pregnant wife. Rebecca took her position at the back of the ballroom. The doors were still open. Guests were finding their seats. The ceremony hadn't officially started. She could see Sienna in the crowd. Third row on the left, wearing cream, the audacity, the sheer breathtaking audacity of it. But she looked miserable, small, nothing like the confident woman who had seduced a billionaire. Carolyn was in the front row, saw Rebecca, gave her a small nod, support, encouragement, solidarity. The doors closed. The string quartet shifted to the bridal march. Wagner, traditional, expected. Jonathan turned, saw her, smiled. That smile, the one he used in photos. The one that said, "Look at us, aren't we perfect?" Rebecca smiled back. A smile that was all teeth, all power, was promise of what was coming. She began to walk down the aisle. Every step was calculated. Every breath was measured. She had practiced this in her mind 1,000 times. Every word, every gesture, every moment of what was about to happen. The guests turned to watch. This vision of bridal elegance, 7 months pregnant, glowing, beautiful, about to destroy everything. Rebecca reached the altar. Jonathan held out his hand. She took it, felt his fingers close around hers. The last time they would touch as husband and wife. The officiant began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the renewal of vows between—" "Excuse me," Rebecca said. Her voice was clear, calm, amplified by the microphone pinned to Jonathan's lapel, carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "Before we begin, I have an announcement." The officiant stopped, confused. This wasn't in the program. Jonathan's smile faltered, just slightly, just enough that she could see the first flicker of uncertainty. "Rebecca, what—" "3 weeks ago," Rebecca said, her voice cutting through the confused murmurs starting to ripple through the crowd, "I discovered that my husband has been having an affair with his executive assistant, Sienna Clark." The ballroom erupted. Gasps, shocked exclamations, the rustle of 300 people shifting in their seats, phones being pulled out, cameras starting to record. This moment, this perfect moment of revelation. "He's been systematically stealing from our marital assets," Rebecca continued, her voice steady over the chaos, "transferring them to offshore accounts, setting up shell companies, moving $47 million to the Cayman Islands, all while I was pregnant with our child." Jonathan's face had gone white. "Rebecca, stop. What are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth, that's all. Just the truth." She turned to address the crowd directly. "He planned to serve me with divorce papers after I gave birth, leave me penniless while he started his new life with Sienna, who, by the way, is also pregnant with his child." The gasps turned to shouts, chaos spreading through the carefully orchestrated event like wildfire. "But I'm an attorney," Rebecca said, her voice cut through the noise like a knife, like justice. "And I'm pretty good at my job. So 3 weeks ago, I froze every asset, every account, every holding. I filed for divorce. I gathered evidence of fraud, and I've been watching him, waiting for this moment." She could see it in his eyes now, the realization, the understanding that he had been outplayed, outmaneuvered, destroyed by the woman he thought was his victim. "The vow renewal is canceled," Rebecca said, each word deliberate, final. "The marriage is over. And Jonathan?" She looked directly at him, at the man she had loved, at the father of her child, at the criminal who had tried to destroy her. "You're going to spend the next several years explaining to federal investigators why you've been hiding money in offshore accounts, why you've been embezzling from the Whitmore family trust, why you've committed fraud against your own family, your own wife, your own unborn child." Jonathan reached for her. Rebecca, please. We can talk about this. Just, she stepped back, out of his reach, out of his influence, out of his life. She removed her wedding ring, the platinum band that had symbolized 10 years of marriage, 10 years of love and wheeze and broken promises. The metal caught the light as she set it on the altar. The sound of it hitting the wood echoed in the silent ballroom. Everyone watching, everyone recording, everyone bearing witness. Oh, and Sienna, Rebecca turned to address the mistress directly. That company Jonathan set up in your name, the one with all the transferred assets, that makes you criminally liable for the fraud. My attorney has already forwarded everything to the IRS, the FBI, and several other agencies. You might want to lawyer up. Sienna's face crumpled. She stood up, tried to leave, but the crowd blocked her exit. Everyone wanting to see, everyone wanting to capture this moment. Rebecca turned back to Jonathan one last time, looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who had tried to destroy her and had destroyed himself instead. Goodbye, Jonathan, she said quietly. I hope she was worth it. Then she turned and walked back down the aisle. The crowd parted, 300 people watching, recording, witnessing the moment Rebecca Morrison reclaimed her power. She walked with her head high, her shoulders back, her hand on her pregnant belly, every inch the warrior she had always been. Behind her, she could hear Jonathan, Rebecca, wait, please. We can fix this. We can. But she didn't turn around, didn't stop, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her waver. She walked out of the Plaza Hotel, out into the September afternoon, out into her new life. Grace and Margaret were waiting, had watched from the doorway, had seen everything. A car was there, David Patterson's associate, always 3 steps ahead. Rebecca got in, closed the door, let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. You did it, Grace said. Oh my God, you actually did it. Rebecca looked back at the plaza, at the chaos she had created, at the life she had destroyed and rebuilt in the span of 35 minutes. We did it, she said, her hand on her belly, the baby kicking in response, her daughter, her reason for fighting. We did it. And for the first time in months, Rebecca Morrison smiled. A real smile, the kind that came from genuine triumph, the kind that came from freedom. The video went viral within hours. By that evening, Rebecca was trending on Twitter. Hashtags like #JusticeFor Rebecca and #pregnant wife revenge were everywhere. The footage, shot by dozens of guests on their phones, was on every news site, every social media platform, every entertainment show. Former corporate attorney Rebecca Morrison publicly confronted her billionaire husband Jonathan Whitmore about his affair and financial fraud during their vow renewal ceremony today at the Plaza Hotel. Rebecca watched it all from the safety of her mother's brownstone. She had changed out of the cream silk dress, would probably burn it later, or maybe donate it, turn something painful into something useful. Now she wore yoga pants and one of her father's old Columbia sweatshirts that Margaret had kept all these years. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. Reporters, friends, acquaintances who hadn't spoken to her in years, suddenly wanting the inside story. Everyone wanting a piece of her moment. She ignored them all. The calls that mattered came through. David Patterson sounding gleeful. The media coverage is perfect. Jonathan's attorneys are scrambling. They want to settle. They know they can't win in the court of public opinion, let alone an actual court. No settlement, Rebecca said. We go to trial. I want everything documented, everything public. No backroom deals. You're sure a trial will be? I'm sure, Ohesham. Marcus Webb called next. The federal investigation is moving forward. The FBI has frozen additional accounts we didn't even know about. The IRS is going after him for tax evasion. The SEC is investigating the stock transfers. This is bigger than we thought, Rebecca. Much bigger. How much bigger? We're looking at potentially over $100 million in fraudulent transfers when you include the business accounts and the family trust. This could be one of the biggest white-collar crime cases in years. Rebecca closed her eyes. $100 million. All stolen while she was pregnant with his child. All hidden while he played the devoted husband. Make sure they throw the book at him, Mama, she said. Oh, they will, trust me. Carolyn called. I saw the video. You were magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. My attorneys have been in touch with yours. I'm prepared to testify about everything. The family trust, the embezzlement, his pattern of behavior. Thank you, Caroline. No, thank you for having the courage I never did, for showing me it's never too late to do the right thing. Grace arrived with dinner, Thai food, Rebecca's favorite, the spicy kind she couldn't eat while pregnant but craved constantly. They modified it, made it mild, but it was the thought that counted. How are you feeling? Grace asked. Numb, Rebecca admitted. I thought I'd feel triumphant, victorious, but I just feel empty. That's the adrenaline wearing off. That's reality setting in. You just blew up your entire life. He blew up my life. I just I just took control of the explosion. Margaret joined them. They sat around the kitchen table, eating pad thai and spring rolls, drinking tea and water. Three women who had been through different battles but understood the cost of fighting. What happens now? Margaret asked. Now and then. Rebecca put her hand on her belly. The baby was active tonight. Lots of movement. Celebrating or protesting, she couldn't tell. Now I wait for the baby, wait for the divorce, wait for justice. And then, and then I figure out how to be a single mother, how to rebuild my life, how to be Rebecca Morrison again, not Jonathan Whitmore's wife. The week that followed was a blur. The media coverage was relentless. Every news outlet wanted an interview. Every talk show wanted her as a guest. Publishers were calling about book deals, producers about movie rights. Rebecca declined them all. This wasn't about fame. This wasn't about publicity. This was about justice, about protecting her child, about reclaiming her life. But the court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. Jonathan Whitmore was a villain, a cheater, a thief, a man who had betrayed his pregnant wife in the most spectacular fashion. His business partners began distancing themselves. Thomas Reeves, his closest associate, held a press conference. I was completely unaware of Mr. Whitmore's fraudulent activities. I'm cooperating fully with investigators and have brought in independent auditors to examine all company accounts. The auditors found more irregularities, more stolen money, more lies. Jonathan's company stock plummeted. Investors pulled out, clients canceled contracts. The empire he had built was crumbling. And Sienna Clark, pregnant and facing her own legal troubles, had made a deal. Full immunity in exchange for her testimony. She gave investigators everything. Emails, text messages, recorded conversations, a complete roadmap of Jonathan's fraud. She sent Rebecca one final message. I'm sorry, I know it doesn't matter. But I am. Rebecca didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. 10 days after the ceremony that wasn't, Rebecca's attorney called with news. Sienna's testimony has been devastating, David said. Combined with Caroline's evidence from the family trust and the forensic accounting Marcus did, the case against Jonathan is airtight. His attorneys know it. The prosecutors know it. Everyone knows it. So what happens? He's going to plead guilty. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, multiple counts. They're offering a deal, 5 years, eligible for parole after 3. 5 years. Jonathan would go to prison for 5 years. Her daughter would be in kindergarten when her father got out. And the divorce? Rebecca asked. Settlement negotiations start tomorrow. But given everything, I think we can get you 70% of the remaining marital assets. Maybe more. 70% of the money Jonathan hadn't already stolen or hidden or squandered on his affairs. Make it 80, Rebecca said. And I want primary physical custody. He gets supervised visitation, 1 afternoon a week after he's served his time. That's harsh. He committed fraud while I was pregnant. He planned to leave me penniless. He got his mistress pregnant while his wife was carrying his child. Rebecca's voice was steel. Harsh would be never letting him see her at all. This is mercy. I'll make it happen. That night, Rebecca went to the nursery in her mother's house. Not the one in the penthouse. That life was over. She had moved out completely, taken only what was hers, left the rest for Jonathan to deal with. Margaret had set up the guest room as a nursery. The crib was there, the changing table, the rocking chair. All the things Rebecca had carefully chosen now in a new space, a new life. Also, Rebecca sat in the rocking chair, put her hands on her belly, felt the baby moving. Your father is going to prison, she whispered. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry you'll grow up with that shadow, with that knowledge, with a father who made terrible choices. The baby kicked, strong, certain. But you'll have me, and you'll have Grandma Margaret, and Aunt Grace, and even Grandma Caroline if you want to know her. You'll have people who love you, who will fight for you, who will show you what integrity looks like, what real love looks like. Rebecca closed her eyes, let herself feel everything she had been holding back. The grief for the marriage that had died, the anger at the betrayal, the fear of single motherhood, the uncertainty of the future. Let herself feel it all, and then let it go. Because in 6 weeks, give or take, she would have a daughter, a real, living, breathing person who would need her to be strong, to be whole, to be the best version of herself. And Rebecca Morrison had never been one to back down from a challenge. 6 weeks later, at 3:27 in the morning on a Wednesday, Rebecca's water broke. She was at Margaret's house, her house now, really. She had moved in permanently, would stay until she figured out her next move, until she was ready to build a new life from scratch. Mom, she called out, trying not to panic, trying to remember all the breathing exercises from prenatal class. Margaret was there in seconds, calm, prepared, already grabbing the hospital bag, already calling for a car. Grace arrived at the hospital an hour later, disheveled from sleep but there, always there. Labor was long, 16 hours of contractions and breathing and walking and trying every position the nurses suggested. Rebecca refused an epidural at first, wanted to feel everything, to be present, to earn this moment through pain and effort and sheer determination. But by hour 12, she gave in, let the drugs dull the pain, focused on breathing, on pushing, on bringing this new life into the world. At 7:43 p.m., Eleanor Margaret Morrison was born. 7 pounds, 6 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair that stood straight up, eyes that opened and looked directly at Rebecca like they had been waiting for this moment. She's perfect, Dr. Brennan said, placing the baby on Rebecca's chest. Absolutely perfect. Rebecca held her daughter, this tiny person who had been with her through everything, who had kicked at all the right moments, who had reminded her that she was never truly alone. Hi, baby, Rebecca whispered. Hi, I'm your mom, and I love you so much already. Eleanor made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like a hello, and Rebecca felt something she hadn't felt in months, something she thought Jonathan had destroyed. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Grace was the first visitor, bringing flowers and balloons and tears of happiness. She's beautiful, Grace said, holding Eleanor with practiced ease. She looks just like you. You think so? Absolutely. Smart eyes, stubborn chin. She's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Margaret came next, held her granddaughter with experienced hands, hummed a lullaby Rebecca remembered from childhood. You did good, sweetheart, Margaret said. She's perfect. And so are you. Even Caroline came, humble, grateful to be allowed in. She's beautiful, Caroline whispered, looking at Eleanor with wonder. Just like her mother. May I hold her? Rebecca nodded, watched Caroline cradle her granddaughter, saw the tears streaming down the older woman's face. I'm so sorry, Caroline said, not to Rebecca, to Eleanor. I'm so sorry for what your father did, for the family you were born into. But I promise you, I will be better. I will do better. For you. Jonathan did not visit. He was in jail, awaiting sentencing. His plea deal had been finalized. 5 years, plus restitution, plus fines, plus the complete destruction of his reputation and career. But he sent a letter, delivered by his attorney. Rebecca read it alone after everyone had left, with Eleanor sleeping in the hospital bassinet beside her. Rebecca, I heard about the baby, our daughter, Eleanor. It's a beautiful name. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I know I've destroyed everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness or understanding or anything but your contempt. But I want you to know I did love you. Once. Maybe not well, maybe not enough, but I did love you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I don't expect you to believe me. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know. Please tell Eleanor when she's old enough to understand that her father loved her, even if he was too broken to show it properly. I hope you find happiness, real happiness, the kind I was too selfish and too stupid to give you. Jonathan Rebecca read the letter twice, then folded it carefully, put it in an envelope, filed it away in the folder she was keeping for Eleanor, for someday, for when her daughter was old enough to make her own decisions about her father. She looked at Eleanor, sleeping peacefully, perfect and innocent and completely unaware of the chaos she had been born into. Your father says he loves you, Rebecca whispered. And maybe that's true. Maybe he does, in his own broken way. But love without action is just words, and words aren't enough. Eleanor stirred, opened her eyes, those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. But I love you with everything I am, Rebecca continued, and I will show you that love every single day, through my actions, through my choices, through the life I build for us. She picked up her daughter, held her close, breathed in that newborn smell. I thought losing him meant losing everything, she whispered. But it turns out losing him meant finding myself and finding you. And that's worth everything. 3 months later, Rebecca was back at work. Not at her old firm. She had started her own practice, Morrison Legal Services, specializing in protecting women's assets during divorce, helping others navigate the same nightmare she had survived. The office was small, just Rebecca and 2 associates she had hired, young attorneys, hungry and brilliant, who believed in the work, who wanted to fight for women who couldn't fight for themselves. Eleanor came to work with her most days, set up in a portable crib in Rebecca's office, supervised by a part-time nanny when Rebecca was in meetings, but always close, always there. Her first client was a woman named Maria, 38, pregnant with twins, husband having an affair with his personal trainer, hiding money in cryptocurrency accounts. Rebecca listened to her story, saw herself in Maria's fear, in her uncertainty, in her desperate need for someone to tell her she would be okay. We're going to fix this, Rebecca said. All of it. And when we're done, you're going to be free and safe, and your children are going to be protected. I promise you that. Maria started crying. How? How can you promise that? Rebecca smiled, not the fake smile she had perfected during her marriage. A real smile. The smile of someone who had been through the fire and come out stronger. Because I've been where you are, and I won't let you go through it alone. 6 months after Eleanor's birth, the divorce was finalized. Rebecca got 80% of the remaining marital assets, primary physical custody. Jonathan got supervised visitation, one afternoon a week after his release from prison. The settlement was fair. More than fair. It was justice. Carolyn had set up a trust for Eleanor, independent of Jonathan, independent of the tainted Whitmore money, a gift from grandmother to granddaughter, an apology and a promise wrapped in financial security. Sienna had her baby, a boy, was raising him alone in Connecticut, had sent Rebecca a card when Eleanor was born. Just 2 words, I'm sorry. Rebecca had sent one back. 3 words, I forgive you, not for Sienna, for herself, for Eleanor, for the future they were building. 1 year after the plaza ceremony, Rebecca walked through Brooklyn Bridge Park with Eleanor in a stroller. It was a beautiful May afternoon, the kind of day that made New York feel magical. The sun was setting over Manhattan, the city where she had lost everything and found herself. Eleanor was 10 months old now, starting to pull herself up, to cruise along furniture, to say mama and nana, and occasionally what sounded like grace. She was perfect, happy, healthy, surrounded by love. Rebecca's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Jonathan, calling from prison. She had blocked his number after the divorce, but somehow he had gotten a new way to reach her. Persistent, as always. She let it go to voicemail. Maybe someday she would answer. Maybe someday Eleanor would have a relationship with her father. But that was a decision for the future, for when she was ready, if ever. Right now, she had everything she needed, a daughter she loved, work that mattered, a life that was hers. Rebecca stopped at a bench, sat down, picked Eleanor up, held her close. You know what I learned? She said softly. The best things in my life came through doors I was terrified to open. Eleanor looked at her, reached out a tiny hand, grabbed Rebecca's nose, giggled. Rebecca laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came from genuine happiness, not performance, not pretense, just joy. She looked out at the Manhattan skyline, at the Plaza Hotel in the distance, at the place where her old life had ended and her new one had begun. So much had changed, so much had been destroyed and rebuilt, so much pain and loss and grief, but also so much growth, so much strength discovered, so much life reclaimed. What do you think, Eleanor? Rebecca asked her daughter. Ready to go home? Eleanor babbled something that might have been agreement, or might have just been baby sounds. But Rebecca chose to believe it was agreement. She stood up, put Eleanor back in the stroller, started walking toward the subway that would take them back to Brooklyn, back to Margaret's brownstone, back to their life, away from the past, toward the future, a future that was uncertain but hers, messy but authentic, challenging but free. And that was worth everything, everything. So that's my story. From betrayed wife to warrior, from victim to victor. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, if it reminded you of your own strength, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button. Let me know you were here, that my story mattered. Drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had to reclaim your power? Have you ever had to be stronger than you thought possible? I read every single one, and your stories inspire me. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. That friend who's going through something. That sister who forgot her strength. That woman who needs to remember she's a warrior. And subscribe, because I'm not done telling stories. Stories of women who fought back, who refused to be victims, who turned their pain into power. Eleanor is sleeping right now, my beautiful daughter, the reason I fought, the reason I won. And every time I look at her, I remember. The best things in life come through doors we're terrified to open. So open that door, hit subscribe, join this community of warriors. Because your story, it's not over yet either. I'm Rebecca Morrison, and I'll see you in the next one. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and you deserve better than settling for less than you're worth. Now go out there and take back your power.